Mazda's been on a roll. Their sales so far this year have been quite impressive. We saw a 30% increase this past July compared to July of 2023. Their sales are very, very impressive. And the new introduction of the CX-70 that I just reviewed this week for you guys, and the CX-90 being on sale full time this year. They have a ton of crossovers, which of course, that's what the market wants. They have a very capable and fun to drive hatchback and sedan. They have niche MX-5 drop top. They're a very compelling brand. They're fun to drive. They're gorgeous. They're well built. But just because their sales are up doesn't mean the company is doing that great. Mazda's spending a lot of money to move their cars, and it's making me a little worried. Guys, make sure you subscribe for Mazda news updates as well as car reviews. We will be getting a hybrid version of the CX-50 later this year. I plan on driving it as soon as possible. And it will have Toyota's hybrid system in there, ported over from the RAV4 more than likely. It'd be great if it was ported over from the Camry because the 5th gen hybrid is fantastic, but a 4th gen would do just fine as well from Toyota's hybrid system. But yes, Mazda's incentives are rising to move cars, and it makes me worried because Nissan has been doing the same thing. Tons of advertising for Nissan, tons of incentives for Nissan. Many of the dealers are not making money here in North America. Something like 40% of the dealers are not profitable right now. If you're a Nissan dealership, it's not as dire for Mazda, but this is definitely a red flag. Spiraling incentives nearly wiped out all of Mazda's operating profit in the last quarter. And like I said, they're up 30% in July to nearly 40,000 vehicles, which was the best July in the history of the company here in the United States. They're up 13% on the year, and they're trying to get to 450,000 vehicles, which would also be a record here in 2024. So they're spending a lot of money to incentivize these vehicles to get them in the hands of customers. Check this out. Incentives per vehicle nearly doubled from the April to June period from the previous year. Incentives have jumped fourfold 4 times since July to September of 2022. Now, 2022 was at the height of the chip shortage and other supply chain disruptions, and manufacturers were just able to get away with not doing any advertisements, no incentives on cars. It was the best time to be a dealer, probably of all time. Record profits for dealers, and arguably record profits for these automakers started around that time, but the profits have evaporated now for many of the automakers. Like we said, Nissan, 99% profit drop. So just how much money is Mazda spending to move these cars? In the last quarter alone, Mazda spent $218 million on incentives. And this surprised Mazda. This was more than they originally expected. Mazda's been trying to move up market, especially with the CX-70 and the CX-90. But with competition as well as high interest rates and other sticker prices being high, expensive vehicles, especially ones that don't have the, let's say, the clout of a traditional luxury car, they're going to be the first ones to see the big turn down. Look at the big trucks right now. Ram, Ford, Chevy, their big trucks have seen massive discounts right now because the market's been shifting so quickly. And it's the same thing for Mazda's more expensive, larger vehicles as well. Look, Ford just killed their 3-row EV that they were planning because they're worried about not only EV uptake, but just they're worried about the uptake of expensive vehicles in the near future. Despite them spending over $200 million on incentives, Mazda's operating profit rose 68%, largely, almost entirely due to foreign exchange rate gains from going to dollars or euros to yen, but also different forms of cost cutting. CFO Jeffrey Guyton said, "This is the year for Mazda that we proclaim this top line growth. That's one of our main priorities this year. We're very pleased that our first quarter revenue is best quarter ever. Yes, growth is happening. But if we look at what happened to Nissan in the 2010s, we saw massive growth, as well as Infiniti. We saw massive growth with those brands. We're seeing some big drawbacks. So I hope that sort of fate doesn't befall Mazda. It's unlikely to because there's so many other things plaguing Nissan right now that aren't the same with Mazda. but it is a red flag. Mazda's average incentive spending rose 110% to about $2,800 per vehicle in April through June, but the industry average is actually above that at $3,100, $3,200. But its spending jump outpaced the overall market's 67% climb. All right, so what does that say? Well, demand for Mazdas, especially the larger vehicles, the CX-90, the CX-70, it doesn't seem to be that high. Unfortunately for them, they're banking on these large, expensive SUVs, which makes sense in the United States market to rake in the profits for them. But it seems to actually be costing them money to move them right now. Get this, incentives on the CX-50 nearly tripled to $4,000. Spending on the flagship CX-90 doubled to $3,500. I'm surprised, honestly. I'm surprised that this number for the CX-90 is below the CX-50. The CX-50 is seeing a lot more production volume ramp up this year, but to see this sort of jump in incentives on the CX-50 is worrisome. I think once they get that hybrid in there, and they're going to be supply constraint from Toyota, how many hybrid modules and powertrains can Toyota provide for the CX-50? There's no way it's going to be the whole CX-50 lineup or even half. It's going to be probably like a quarter would be my guess, maybe even less for the CX-50 hybrid volume shakeout. But they're not going to have to incentivize a CX-50 hybrid very much, I would expect, compared to the 2.5 liters. CX-70 that I just drove this morning, actually, incentives are $2,800, but it's the same vehicle as the CX-90. Their costs about identically. So this incentive will come to the CX-70 before you know it. Guyton is expecting incentive spending to moderate in the later half of this fiscal year. And when you're talking about fiscal year, that could trail into actually 2025. So it could be January through March of 2025. Mazda is also expecting falling interest rates to take care of the edge of incentive spending. Interest rates really haven't started to fall at all. It's going to take many, many months, maybe even years for interest rates to be at a point where it's going to really draw customers back in. And with the last statement from Guyton here, I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't look that good in the future. Yes, the CX-50 hybrid's coming out. I'm just going to look at what's in my area right now. This is not looking at incentives, but this will tell me if there's big discounts at the dealer level. All right, for these Mazda vehicles. Yes, we're starting to see discounts. Check this out. CX-30 is seeing a $1,600 price drop. Let's see if we can check out maybe some of the other trim levels. Here's a small price drop, $900 on the carbon turbo. Typically, the highest volume trims are going to see the biggest price reduction. So let's just look at the preferred S package here. Yes, here we go. A $2,800, roughly $2,800 discount on a CX-30. Yeah, we saw incentives triple to $4,000 on the CX-50. So, wow, I'm seeing a $26,000 CX-50. But again, it's always best to see the most common package here. Holy cow, look at what's happening with the CX-50 right now. $33,000 MSRP, and you can get them for $27,000. That's like a $6,000 price decrease, all right, or price drop. And then we're going to look at some CX-90s here because that is a pretty high incentivized vehicle as well, just behind the CX-50. We're going to look at the Premium Plus here, and let's just look at the Premium on the plug-in hybrid here after that. So let's look at the CX-90, $51,000 MSRP. You're seeing a $4,000 price drop, not as big as the CX-50. So the CX-90 not seeing as big as price drops. Let's check out the plug-in hybrid and see how that compares. Compared to the turbo model. $2,000 price drop is all. I'm not seeing that big of price drops on the plug-in hybrid. So I wonder if there is more demand for the plug-in hybrid, and maybe if you lease it, you can still get the EV tax credit on it. That might be helping the situation so they don't have to drop the prices as much. I think that could be what's going on there, but we're seeing price drops on Mazdas despite them having the best year ever so far, despite them having the best July on record. Despite wanting to sell 450,000 units in North America this year, it's going to be interesting to see how Mazda finishes the year, where their profits are going to be, how much they have to spend on incentives. But here's the thing. It's not just Mazda that's struggling with profitability right now. It's all these automakers. All these automakers, they have to figure it out in the near term because affordability is at its worst time in a long time, and people are not interested in taking out a high interest loan right now with a really high monthly payment. It's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say down below on where you think the market is headed. You know, Nissan got hit hard first. Mazda trying to push volume. And it's hard to do when interest rates and inflation is just, everything's just not in their favor on the financial end right now. All right. But they have good products. Is it enough? Time will tell. Thank you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.